Ransomware has gotten so advanced that it even starts doing negotiations automatically.
We're also seeing that the most recent ransomware attacks. So with the advancement of AI, again, I think Commvault introduced something called the synthetic recovery. That's leveraging on AI to actually piece together a clean copy based on the different clean point and the different backup copies. That's clean. Then you form a new clean copy, right? Called the synthetic copy, but it's clean. And that will help the businesses to minimize the rollback, because then, the business unit can get the latest clean data from a different backup copies.
Welcome to the podcast. While companies are leveling up on cyber resiliencies, attackers are leveling up too. They tap on AI to cybercharge their attacks. Today, we are going to talk about ransomware in the age of AI, how do defenders stay ahead of threats that evolve at machine speeds. I'm joined by two experts today. First, my colleague Gerald David from HPE.
Hello.
And our partner from Commvault, Daniel
Hi.
Tan. Well, let's begin. AI-enabled cyber attacks are getting more common. Some publications even suggest that it has increased by 47% globally in the year 2025. So how is AI changing the way ransomware behaves today?
Well, Tricia, that's a really good question. What we see, right? AI has accelerated the speed of attacks by about 100-fold. It's dropped the skill barrier to almost zero. So you don't need to know the ins and outs to actually be an effective hacker. It's enabled malware to adapt in real time. New variants can evolve, can mutate to actually counter the tools that you have in your environment. One of the examples, recent ones, where I'm taking that statement from is LameHug, which they actually use publicly available LLMs to generate live environment-specific commands to attack a customer, right? So ransomware is getting faster. It's evolving. It's reshaping the way we used to think about attacks. Now it's creating a bit of a problem because it's evolving in real time, which means that it's a bit of a bigger problem for us to solve.
So it thinks on the spot and it changed and it evolved.
And if you want to take that one step further, ransomware has gotten so advanced that it even starts doing negotiations automatically based on the industry that you're in, the size of your organization, what is their first call, how would they actually address you, how would they negotiate with you. So it's going not just from the attack, but also the negotiation and the resolution stage from a ransomware perspective.
I think just to add on to what Gerald has mentioned, right? With the advancement of AI, what we see is that, the bad guys have a means to scale faster, right? So if you look at in the past, right, to perform the reconnaissance, it requires a lot of manual work. And right now, all of a sudden, with the advancement of AI, you can do the automated kind of a reconnaissance, right? And then more so generate a more highly precise kind of a phishing attack, right? Or we call it spear phishing. Spear phishing meaning, right, in the most layman possible, is that you have to understand the context about the victim first or the target first before you craft the phishing attack campaigns, right? But with the advancement of AI, you see, I hate to say this, right? Sometimes, the bad actors are the, early technology adopters, right? They would actually adopt the technology of AI to perform that highly precise kind of a phishing attack so that, there are victims who actually fall into that traps, right? So it is very highly convincing. And the other one is like what Gerald mentioned, right? We're also seeing that the most recent ransomware attacks, the malwares are able to change its forms and shapes, right? So the technical word for it is called polymorphic malwares or ransomware, which means that they can hide in the environment, change their form and shapes according to the defenses that you have in the system, right? So it becomes very, very hard for the traditional way of detecting the patterns and signature to find out about all these attacks.
So what does then this means to the enterprise? Because the ransomware keep evolving and it keep changing. It's like it can even change to the extent that we don't even recognize them anymore.
That's a great question, right? I think, as scary as it sounds, right? This also means that the traditional way of prevention are no longer that effective, right? So the way to look at it is that you have to assume compromise, right? And have the design for resilience in mind, right? Pardon me, right? Because if you're just waiting to defend, because all the polymorphic attacks are, going to be like changing their forms and shape, right? And then all of a sudden your defenses are no longer that effective, right? So the correct way to do it is that you need to build up for resilience, have a means to detect anomalies earlier in the cycle, right? Having that copy of immutable and indelible backups is another example that nobody can tamper with the data, right? And ability to recover the clean system, clean data into the clean state fast.
So it sounds like prepare, protect, and we ourselves also needs to evolve as the AI ransomware evolves,
evolve,
attacks come, right?
Exactly.
And by the way, Daniel, I heard you have a very interesting second identity, right? And that's like a ethical hacker. Do you
Yep.
really actually
The
do
keyword
that?
is ethical, right? I always have to mention that, right? Whenever I say this.
So now you have seen both the attacking and the defending,
Yeah.
right? So as a defender, if the defender had to adopt just one ethical hacker mindset to stay ahead of the AI, what would be your recommendations?
Thanks, Trish. I think this is a really good question, right? Because if you look at, I watch football or soccer, right? So if it's very seldom that we see a team that only play defense win, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you
Yeah.
do need to practice the offense. I would say one of the mindset we need to have is to practice the offense like a hacker mindset, right? Be brutally honest to yourself, right? Which means that when you are actually applying the offense into your internal system, don't stage it, don't no drama inside it, right? So it's really that red teaming going all full out to perform an offensive kind of a coordinated
You
actions,
think
of
like
course.
a hacker?
Correct. Then after that, you will see how you can bounce back as well. Also test the ability for your system to bounce back. That's like kind of where the resilience come from, right? Hence the word resilience. Yeah.
Okay, so it means a bit of a role play. Sometimes you play a defender role and sometimes you play an attacker roles.
Correct. Yeah. So in the traditional term, there's a blue team and the red teaming, right? But we often see that, the red teaming stops at capturing the flag, which means that they captured, like some vulnerabilities or loophole in the system. Then they hand it over to the blue team to patch all the vulnerabilities, right? But very seldom you see that there are actually people that trying to stitch both of them together. Let's say, for example, once the attack has been compromised and confirmed, how do we test the ability on cyber recovery, the ability to bounce back on, performing the clean restore of the workload, power up the minimum viable and important workload, right? I think that part is seldom being tested.
I see. So we need to think really like a attacker who is already like inside. So thanks for that very powerful recommendations, right? So now let's say we connect this mindset to the actual technology behind the defense. Now we talk about Commvault purple, HPE green. With these two colors combining together, what is that uniqueness that we can actually offer to the market, to the enterprise out there?
I think this is where we start putting some products, some names to our joint solutions, right? I like to lead with this. Modern problems require modern solutions, right? From a HPE Commvault perspective, we always talk about a source to target, end-to-end data protection strategy. I think everything that Daniel mentioned, detecting it, recovery at speed, continuous data protection, that underpins really nicely with what we have from a product perspective. So I talk about a source to target. So start at the source. Our storage systems, the B10000 is built with an inbuilt ransomware detection engine. So it detects anomalies and you start at the source. For your most critical workloads, we've got the Zerto solution, which is part of the Commvault continuous data protection suite as well. So those are for your most critical workloads, things that you need to protect and bring up really, really quickly. And then you extend that to things like the X10000, which is used for rapid backup and restores. Again, integrated really deeply at the core level with Commvault that understands it as an object target to write to and restore from. And we've got the traditional way, the classic air gap, which is tapes, which still works. And I think the beauty of all of this is the combined technologies understand each other at a fundamental level. So Commvault understands the storage systems. Commvault understands our store ones, which is used for long-term retention. It understands the Catalyst protocol. It can store it in an immutable fashion. So everything that Daniel have just said, all I've done is I've put products to it. We started a source, the B10000. Daniel talked about continuous data protection. That is through the Zerto software. Daniel talked about having backups which are immutable. That is through the store ones, through the Catalyst protocol, which cannot be manipulated. Daniel talked about having backup and restore really quickly. That is again through the integration of Commvault into the X10000 product suite. and they understand tapes as well. So that's your true classic air gap, which has been there for the past 20 odd years. I don't know. And it still works, right? But where I want to cover this is the two companies, we understand each other from a product and solution perspective. So it's not just Commvault sitting on HPE hardware, it's understanding the protocols that lie underneath to help customers get back up and running faster in the event of an attack.
Thanks for sharing how HPE and Commvault really works together to build this modern ransomware defense empire. So what is Commvault's biggest advantage when it comes to ransomware protections and rapid recovery?
Now, thanks for that question, Trish. Right, I would say a few things. Right, I mean, just borrowing some of the terms that and capabilities that Gerald has mentioned. I think the immutable and indelible kind of capabilities are still very, very much important, right? Even in the context of today, right?
Yep.
So make sure that we have that, right? But I think what we are actually layering on top will be the AI-driven anomaly detections, right? So in short, have that early warnings, right? So there is this, one customer that, I think I engaged with, right? So the CISO was telling me that the Commvault ability to detect the anomalies is the one that gives us that early warning in terms of finding out that, we are at the early stage of, let's say, ransomware attack or malware attack, right?
Yeah.
Because the traditional perimeter security tool, yes, they are doing their job very well as well. But sometimes, if let's say the hackers are starting their attack, kind of a vector from the backup system itself, that's where I think we need to play our part, right? That you will be at peace of mind, right, if you're using like Commvault and HPE, because we have the most cutting edge kind of a AI anomaly detection. And then the other thing that I think I would say is the way to run the clean room that is properly done, and it's not like just saying that me too, I have a clean room kind of things, because a properly designed clean room has to be giving that options and flexibility to the customers, right? So if I want to build my clean room, I can build it on-prem, I can build it in a cloud, I can build it on multi-cloud, right? So it's really going to be up to me where I want to park my clean room. But one principle around that is that try to park the clean room outside of your usual tenant.
Makes sense.
Right?
Yeah,
You don't want to actually park your clean room as part of the other tenants.
Yeah.
Then when the hackers are into your system,
They've got it
what
all.
makes you think that they can't actually see that part of the
Hello,
the
I'm
clean room,
here.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly, right? So it's not so clean anymore, isn't it, right? And of course, the last but not least, I think is the Commvault ability to manage, all the new and the cutting edge, right? So, all the way from AS400 workload, various databases, to all the Kubernetes and DevOps and SaaS, all under a unified platform that allows, like, for example, in the event that we need a recovery scenario, right? There is a single cyber recovery workflow that Commvault can combine with HPE to just restore all your critical workload back, right? You don't have to go to another tool, another plugins, and other things, right?
Since today's topic is around ransomware in AI, and I also hear that Commvault uses AI in Commvault software product as well. So would it be all right to walk us through the use of AI in Commvault products without letting the trade secrets out? A little bit more, let us...
Okay, I'll try not to let it...
Yeah.
No, thanks for that question, right, Trish, right? I think it's a good question, because I think AI is on top of a lot of the, like whether it's a CIO, CDO, CISO's mind now, right? I would say that Commvault do AI in a very practical but very responsible way, right? So everything we do is adhering to the responsible AI framework. That's, first of all, very, very critical. But secondly, I think we are not shy of using AI to really beef up the entire anomalies detection methods, right? So in short, the AI can be used before, during, and after, even after as well, right? Because this attack can happen at any phases or stages, right? It can be before the attack, when we're trying to do the backup operation, for example, something is already off, right? Then we have to highlight it, we have to respond to it. What about when we do the backup? Something is amiss, right? Somebody is trying to tap wire into the data, steal some data, do some exfiltration actions. This gonna be picked up as well. And after the backup too, we're gonna continuously make sure that the data that sits inside the backups and the HPE storage are clean, right? So we gotta scan them and making sure that they are always good, right? So all these can leverage on the help of AI. The other areas what I would say is actually quite unique of how we use AI is there is this problem around rollback, right? I want to talk a little bit more about this. So rollback is, I would say, the most faced challenges today by a lot of the business, right? Is that when we need to find the clean point or the clean data, we oftentimes need to go back like 3 weeks, 3 months, or even 6 months ago. So when you take that old copy of data, even though it's clean, to the business unit, the chances are they're going to say, well, thank you, Daniel, that's not very useful because that's 6 months ago, right? I mean, my business has
Stale
progressed.
data. Yeah.
So how can you help me to minimize that rollback? Give me the latest data, but ensuring that it's clean. So with the advancement of AI, again, I think Commvault introduced something called the synthetic recovery, right? That's leveraging on AI to actually piece together a clean copy based on the different clean point and the different backup copies. That's clean. Then you form a new clean copy, right? Called a synthetic copy, but it's clean, right? So and that will help the businesses to minimize the rollback, because then, the business unit can get the latest clean data from a different backup copies, right? So that's one way of looking at, how we really use the AI, right? The last area, of course, is quite, even though it's quite tedious, is using AI to actually enhances the productivity and the efficiencies of troubleshooting, right? So in the past, right, if you face some challenges, let's say, with configurations or, some error messages that pops up, right, you would actually have to log a ticket. But with AI, sometimes you can just summon we call it Ali, stands for Autonomous Resilience. Summon up Ali and say, okay, how can I solve this problem? And Ali will actually go online, and search for all the potential solutions and troubleshooting steps, so that you can actually follow that steps and try to get it resolved, right?
That's
if you
very
couldn't
cool.
get it resolved, then you open up a ticket. That's fine, right? But what that allows you to do is that you can, hopefully can resolve that issue faster, right? Because we all know that, backup, SLA, everything is quite critical, right? We do not want to miss that SLA. Yeah.
So that's very nice, right? That I didn't even know that you have a Ali. It sounds like a genie that I can just
Summon.
summon
like that, yeah.
and interject if I doesn't like it, right? So that's very nice. And just to build on that, what does it feel like for our customers when Commvault and HP capabilities kicks in at the moment they need it the most?
Okay, maybe I'll start first. I'll say that, it's the confidence and clarity in the middle of chaos, right? Because we all know that, right? In whenever this sort of things like ransomware attacks, cyber events, right? It's quite stressful, right?
Yeah.
It's quite
It is.
chaotic as well, right? And all of a sudden, you also have the expect a cross-functional team to actually work with each other during this chaotic time, right? You would really hope for a really solid solution when it comes to getting your critical workload back and ensuring that they are clean. So with these two, I think best of the breed kind of like one is like having the best data protection software for so many years, and then one is having all the storage that, like cutting edge as well. When you combine that together, that gives the confidence that, okay, you know what? We have practiced this before. We have tested this before. It works. So hopefully during that actual event, right, touch wood, right, then you have that confidence, right? At least is to know that, okay, you know what? I got this in control. I know what to do. I've practiced it, right? I could get my data back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll just underpin that by saying, a customer would feel really controlled and very assured. The product works. In the event they need, something goes wrong, they know they can rely on a good collaborative partnership to help them get out of it. Systems recover in minutes, or not hours or days. You've got the best of breed from an AI detection perspective. You've got the best of breed from a product perspective that underpins that. So I think it's the whole stability, the whole speed of it all that gives the customer a bit of that confidence and assurance, right? That if something goes wrong, this partnership is going to get them out of it.
So you're kind of telling the customers that I got you.
Yeah, I mean, look,
It's like a confidence fall.
it is.
If you
right?
fall, I'm here to catch
we
you.
got you. I don't want to overuse this, but it's this whole better together story, right? But we've truly demonstrated that time and time over again with some of the shared customers that we have all across the world.
That's great insights, So Daniel, before we actually close, what would be your one piece of advice, given that, you're both a defender and an attacker?
Ethical attackers.
Ethical.
attackers.
Always
Okay.
have to emphasize.
What would be the one piece of advice to our listener to prepare for the future?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Thank you, Trish. Just again, re-emphasizing of some of the things that also Gerald mentioned, right? The ransomware is inevitable, right? We all can attain to that, right? But the downtime doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah,
and the confidence of recovery has to be in place as well. So that in order to build up that confidence, right? I think the only way to do it is to test it, right? I always like to borrow like the success story of Michael Jordan, right? The only way for you to be successful at basketball is to keep keep doing the same thing for many, many times until even other people questioning, why are you doing that same thing for over and over again, right? So cyber recovery is the same thing, right? In my opinion, right? So it's like, you're going to practice it in a way that, so that when the things really comes to you, you will be at a position where you say, okay, you know what? I have tested this, right? With the solutions that both Commvault and HPE is giving me. I'm confident. I know that this is coming. Now let's activate our plan, right? And our cyber recovery workflow. And I know that I have a means to find that clean data. I know that I have a means to find a clean place, which is clean room to restore into. I also have means to actually bring back my minimum viable kind of a business applications up and running. That position is what I think we are emphasizing here, right? Is test it enough, test the cyber recovery until that you are at a state that you are confident that you can actually bring your minimum viable business state back.
Great advice, Daniel. And to our listener, remember, ransomware is getting smarter. We too can continue to stay ahead with the right mindset and with the right technologies. And resiliency is absolutely within our reach. Thank you for spending your time with us. And that's all for today.
Thank you, Trish. Thanks,
Thank
Daniel.
you. Pleasure.